Hey, it's Deborah McMahon talking astrology with you. And today we're talking about the upcoming Mars retrograde in Aries. Mars will make his ingress into Aries on the 28th of June this year and won't depart until the 7th of January 2021. So that's over 6 months in Aries, which is an extraordinary long period of time. Ordinarily, Mars will take 6, maybe 7 weeks to transit through a sign. So this is going to be quite a significant influence. And the reason for the long period in Aries is because of Mars's retrograde, and that will occur between the degrees of 15 to 28 degrees of Aries. The retrograde station occurs at 28 degrees and 8 arc minutes, and the direct station occurs at 15 degrees and 14 arc minutes. So Mars signifies our physical energy and ability to assert ourselves and pursue our desires. It's our personal will and passion, anger, force, and Mars can also signify our sexual drive. And when Mars is in Aries, he's in his cardinal domicile, so he has essential dignity. We want to act now and be first and go after what we want. Self-autonomy is much more important than making nice. And if you're interested in recording the key retrograde dates, Mars will move into its pre-retrograde shadow from the 26th of July as it moves past the 15th degree. It will reach its retrograde station on the 10th of September at 28 degrees of Aries, start to move backwards through the sky, and then reach its direct station on the 13th of November, once again at the 15-degree mark. And then turn forward again and go through those degrees for the third time, and moving past the 28th degree on the 3rd of January, past his shadow. So this is a chart showing the position of Mars as he makes his ingress. And you can see him sitting here in the 6th house on this chart at 0 degrees, 0 arc minutes. This chart is cast for Christchurch, New Zealand, which is where I am. And if you're in a different part of the world, it may orient differently, but all the planets will be in the same degrees. And I'm using a whole sign house system here. So you can see the ascendant is sitting here at 21 degrees of Scorpio. And so in this house system, whichever sign the ascendant is in, the whole of that sign is the first house, the whole of the next sign is the second house, and so forth. You may use a different house system and just divide this pie slightly differently. And this is a close-up of that ingress moment. And you can see I have attempted to mark the degrees, 15 degrees and 28 degrees here with little red dots. And what will happen, just to reinforce what will happen with the retrograde, is Mars will move forward between the degrees of 15 and 28 of Aries. As he approaches that 28-degree mark, he will become slower and slower in his motion until he comes to a complete stop. He'll then slowly pick up speed and work his way backwards through the zodiacal degrees, 28, 27, 26 degrees, etc. of Aries. Pick up speed during the middle part of that transit, and then start to slow again as he approaches his direct station at 15 degrees and come to a full stop. And then he will turn again to forward motion and make a third pass through those degrees. So now I'll just see if I can bring up my software, which is Solarfire 9, and it's produced by Astrolabe if you're impressed with it. You can do an online search for them and purchase it completely online if you are so inclined. So you can see Mars again at his ingress point. The chart is cast for Christchurch, and it's the 28th of June in my part of the world. It may be the 27th. You may be reading that date as the 27th in your part of the world if you're a long way away from New Zealand. So if I start just quickly moving Mars through these degrees one day at a time, going along at a reasonable clip. Now that little change there where Mars moved from the 6th house to the 5th house is just how the software works. The ascendant moved into Sagittarius, so that's why that little jump to our eyes occurred. It was just a very small planetary movement, but that's just how live animation works. So if we keep going, we're into July. Mars is popping along quite nicely. And as we approach, let's see, 15-degree mark, 26th of July, that's when Mars moves into its pre-retrograde shadow. So what we experience from this date on, we may revisit and review before the end of the year is over. We just keep moving into August. And an interesting phenomenon here is that Mars is actually going to make a square with Jupiter on the 5th of August. So you can see Mars here at the 19 degrees of Aries, and in the square position, 19 degrees of Capricorn is Jupiter. So squares put the expression of planets at cross purposes, creating dynamic tension and requiring us to make personal adjustments. And Jupiter is about growth and it expands whatever it touches. And when in Capricorn, we can expect to develop maturity and become serious about our growth. We might identify a plan, start working it, and forego short-term comfort in committing to long-term goals. So that's at cross purposes to this urge to move forward and take action from Mars, coming through from Mars. But Jupiter is also in contact with Pluto and Saturn. And if we move on, Mars will actually make contact by square with Pluto around about the 13th of August. So still not really out of range of that influence from Jupiter before the Pluto influence comes in. So Pluto intensifies what it touches. It can signify the shadow or that which is hidden. And it offers us the inner resources to dive deep and bring up what it finds ready for inspection. Under the influence of Pluto, themes of passion, power, and obsession could emerge. So, an intense couple of weeks, possibly. If we keep moving on, we'll find that Mars will actually square Saturn on the 25th of August at 26 degrees. You can see Mars here in Aries and Saturn here in Capricorn. So Saturn counsels us to take caution. We may experience restrictions and limitations under the influence of this planet. It brings maturity and austerity, often working on long-term plans for security or in service of establishing a firm foundation or making something of substance. It's quite the contrast to the unbridled rush to action that is Mars in Aries. So, let's keep Mars moving through. And you can see now starting to really slow. I'm clicking through quite a few days and we're still at the 27th degree, only into the 28th now. And on the 10th of September, Mars reaches its retrograde station. And the software denotes that with a little s here. So just remembering that the more Mars slows, the more his signification strengthens. And so for any of us who have planets or sensitive points near 28 degrees of Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, we might expect quite a personal response to this Mars call to action. And that can be on a couple of weeks either side of the station point because he's moving quite slow into that station point and moving quite slow out of it. So Mars in his own domicile of Aries, and so the expression of his natural inclinations is encouraged. He will want to take action now and damn the bruised feelings or constraints. But you can see that while he's in station, he's still an aspect to Saturn. Still quite a tight aspect there, a square aspect with Saturn. So Saturn can be experienced as restrictions and retractions, as I've said, and it urges us to take a planned approach, which could mean some loss or isolation in the short term, sacrificing in order to reap benefits for the longer run. Quite an uncomfortable interaction with Mars and Saturn there. So let's keep moving software on, and you can see that quite a few days pass before we're moving past that 28 degrees mark. So you can see that Mars is moving backwards, 28, 27, 26 degrees. I'm going to go back a day, 30th September, because I wanted to say something here. So because we're going over the same ground, we're going to go over those same major aspects again. And you can see here that on the 30th of September, Mars will be back in square aspect, an exact or perfected square with Saturn. So that could be an interesting day. If we keep him moving through his retrograde journey, he will then strike Pluto on the probably 10th of October is closest, at least in my part of the world. And so that square between 22 degrees of Aries and Capricorn will be quite a significant one. We could be revisiting the themes first raised in August. If we keep that retrograde journey going, then Mars will also come into contact with Jupiter again at 19 degrees. So having moved on to the 19th of October, I'm actually going to have to move us backwards in time because we missed something in going through those squares. So if we go back to the 14th of October, you can see that Mars is in direct opposition with the Sun at 21 degrees. This is what astrologers call a Mars opposition. We would call it a Mars opposite Sun. So it's a challenging opposition aspect when the planets are separated by 180 degrees, and it brings feelings of internal contradiction, or it can manifest as another person taking an adversarial stance or wanting to pull in the opposite direction. So this opposition will be a swift moving transit where we could feel that our authority is challenged, our ego is confronted, or someone prevents us from getting what we want. Well, that will be our perception of it. We're likely to have a very fiery response. But this is also a sky gazing, try and say that, sky gazing opportunity. As the aspect perfects, we can look to the west at sunset to see the sun sink below the horizon. If we then turn to the opposite direction, the eastern horizon, we can see the red star of Mars rising, and it will take the night to travel across the sky, setting on the western horizon the next morning just as the sun rises in the east. So that will be quite a phenomenon to watch if you're inclined to do some stargazing overnight. Okay, let's go back. Moving Mars through his retrograde journey. We're back again to the 19th of October. And if we keep him moving on, we can see that as he approaches the 15th degree, he starts to slow again. Whoops. That little jump between the houses is just because the ascendant moved. It's just the way it's portrayed in animated software. It wouldn't be without the animation, but it does make those jumps from time to time. So, 15th degree, moving very, very slowly, and as we get to 14 degrees, 15 degrees, 14 arc minutes, we can see that Mars is at his direct station, and the software is showing that with the little S for station there. After the station, we will be invited to integrate what we've learned since July 26, when Mars was last at the same degree as he was entering his pre-retrograde journey through Aries. But this time we will have Venus and the Moon in opposition, in challenging opposition to the stationed Mars, suggesting the consequences of our actions for our significant others or for the public may now make their presence felt. The Moon can signify the public in general. Venus in Libra seeks a balanced approach that works for everyone, in contrast to that Martian energy. So let's keep Mars moving through his journey through Aries. He's now moving forward again, slow at first, but then he'll pick up speed. And we'll just keeping an eye on what's going on in Capricorn. That little jump again was just because the ascendant changed, moved into Aries itself. So just keeping an eye on what's happening in Capricorn. Saturn and Jupiter are getting ready to make a sign change, which means that Mars won't make a third square with those two planets. But Pluto is slow moving enough that there is actually a third square that forms between Mars and Pluto before his retrograde is fully over. So that occurs 24th of December. I'm a few hours off, so let's take it to 23rd, but I think in New Zealand it's the 24th of December, earlier in the day that the square becomes perfected. So that will be an interesting Christmas. If you're in a different part of the world, the date would probably read the 23rd. It would be the 24th in New Zealand. Interestingly enough, if I go backwards 2 days, or I didn't go backwards, I went forwards. There we go, 22nd of December. You can see that Jupiter and Saturn in their new sign of Aquarius are making a very significant conjunction, but that's a tale for another time. So if we keep moving Mars through, as he approaches, he's still actually moving fast as he approaches the 28th degree this time. He's got good speed. As he moves past that degree, he's free from his shadow, and it's only and that occurs on the 3rd of January. It's only a couple of days later, the 7th of January, when he actually moves out of, at last moves out of Aries and into his new sign of Taurus. So if I can now go back to the PowerPoint. This is where we left off. This is just a summary of the key aspects during that retrograde. It's 6 months, it's a 6-month experience of Mars and Aries, so there's a lot going on, but I just picked out the really big ones here. Just a reminder to watch out for the August squares with Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn. There's also a trine between Mars and Mercury in Cazimi, so Mercury conjunct the Sun. That should be interesting. I didn't talk about it, so much going on, but something to watch out for as you're watching the days go by. Then there will be the squares of Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter in October. The Mars opposite Sun, or the Mars opposition, on the 14th of October. And at the end of the year, 24th of December for me in New Zealand, but maybe the 23rd where you are, Pluto will square Mars. Okay, that's the Mars and Aries story, briefly. Just to note that the dates in this broadcast are correct for Christchurch, New Zealand. So if you're listening from somewhere else in the world, then just please remember to convert your dates to your place in the world. It will only be out by a day. This has been Deborah McMahon speaking astrology with you today. If you found something of value in this, then please feel free to comment, like, or share. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And if you do like it, I contribute more regularly to my Facebook page, and here's an image of that if you want to go find that. I'll have separate write-ups of each of the stages of the Mars story through Aries that you can check out, and you're welcome to check back to this broadcast as well. So thanks for being with me today, and bye for now.